crossed over into the Twilight Zone.
Mr. Chambers, don't get on that ship. The rest of the book, To Serve Man, it's a cookbook.
Time. Ah, there's time enough at last.
Room for one more, honey.
You're a bad man. You're a very bad man.
There's a man out there.
What?
Look, he's crawling on...
My name is Talkie Tina, and you'll be sorry.
You've just crossed over into the Twilight Zone.
All right, everybody. How you doing today? I'm Rich, and this is live Rerun Zone. I want to thank everybody for stopping by. It's been one heck of a day trying to set this up. I haven't done live streams in a while. Been playing around with my stream deck. Switching camera angles here. So, I'm hoping you all can hear me out there. John Jones, thanks for the welcome back. Playing around with Ecamm here. It looks like I'm able to put your comments up on the screen, which is cool. I saw other people doing it, so I thought, yeah, I'd like to do that too. Luana the Shell People. Hello, everyone. Hi, Luana. What are the Shell People? Was that something in a Twilight Zone episode that I missed? Anyway, like I was saying, I'm Rich. This is RerunZone Live. And I wanted to talk a bit about the Twilight Zone. Hi, Alice. How are you today? I grew up in the, most of my young years were in the 60s. I mean, I was born in the 50s. But when I grew up, I didn't really get to watch the Twilight Zone when it first came on. It was kind of, it was late. It was up late night for me. I wasn't allowed to stay up that late. Occasionally, I would see it while I was walking down the hallway past my mom and dad's room. They had the TV on, and I kind of got a glimpse of the screen. And it was really intriguing to me. Hey, Captain Action. Twilight Zone was one of the best shows on television. Yeah, I totally agree with that. The original series, of course. I know there were quite a few remakes. There was a pretty decent movie. But the original Twilight Zone is where it's at for me. Rod Serling was a genius creator, writer, director, all those things. And he actually wrote, I think it was somewhere around 90 something, maybe 92 episodes of the original Twilight Zone. Out of 156 episodes, Rod Serling wrote 92 of them, I think it was. Incredible output. I'm not saying everyone was, incredibly fantastic. He had a couple of clunkers in there too. But for the most part, Rod's stories were incredible, character-driven, story-driven. They made you feel something about a character that you've only watched for 25 minutes of an episode. It was crazy. And then on top of that, he'd throw in those twist endings. David Banner. Well, how's it going, David? How's your alter ego doing? Let's see who else we have here. Yep, Loanna. Rod Serling was amazing. I totally agree. Now, I want to talk about this particular episode, but let me get back to talking about the Twilight Zone, when I grew up with it. So I never got to see them originally, but I did start watching them when they were in syndication. And then I finally saw them being advertised on Columbia. I don't know if you guys remember, or if you're that old, if you remember the VHS tapes that Columbia would offer. And, I would get, I don't know, I think I saw in a magazine an ad for them or something, and you would subscribe to them. And for $29.95, you would get a tape of Twilight Zone episodes. There were 4 of them on a tape. And I believe I still have them somewhere in a box. I got the entire series on VHS tape. And that's where I really started to get into watching all the episodes. Even though I had seen most of them in syndication, it was just pot luck back then. There was no, you didn't have any streaming on demand. You just had to wait for the reruns to come on. So even before the Columbia tapes, I was starting to tape them on my VHS machine. They'd come on late night on some station. I can't remember what now. And I taped them as they came in. Well, of course, they were cut up. You didn't get the whole episode. Yeah, MeTV still has them. I think Pluto TV still shows episodes of the Twilight Zone. I don't know if they do marathons or not. I heard somewhere that Pluto TV does marathons every now and then. Do they do that on MeTV also, Luana? Do you know? Anyway, that was the first time I really got a whole collection of Twilight Zone, and I had to wait month after month after month, 156 episodes. Let me see, 4 episodes a month into 156. I don't even know how many months that was, but it was a long time till I got them all. And the one thing, I couldn't wait till I get the 4th season episodes, because I don't think I saw any of those in syndication. I'm not even sure if they were in the syndication package, because they were a different format. So when I got those 4th season episodes, I was thrilled. Again, I had to wait, and $30 for 4 episodes. But I loved the Twilight Zone. Later on, I finally bought the DVD collection, and I still haven't gotten the Blu-ray collection, but I did buy them on digital on the iTunes store. And they're pretty good copies. In fact, they have some extras on them. They've got Rod Serling's previews at the end where he talks about the next episode coming up. I don't know if you guys have gotten to see that stuff. Have you? Has anyone gotten to see those original endings with Rod previewing them at the end? Jonathan says, if I ever met the devil, he would be just like Burgess Meredith's Mr. Smith and argue there is no devil and no soul. Yeah. But if you've never seen the original, on the Blu-rays, or I think they were on the DVDs too. I'm not positive about that, but they're on the digital versions. So I watched them all from beginning to end over and over again. In fact, I just finished watching Where's Everybody for the first time today, but I watched it again yesterday because I wanted to get a good feel for the episode. I hadn't seen it in a while, and it is the original pilot episode of the Twilight Zone, even though a lot of people like to say the time element was his first real Twilight Zone episode, but, technically it wasn't, in the Twilight Zone. It was in the Westinghouse Desilu Playhouse about a year before. It was actually 1958, and it went over so well that they decided to ask Rod if he could come up with a series based around weird supernatural, type of things. Of course, Rod jumped at the chance, and what you see now is the Twilight Zone. But if you've never seen the time element, it's actually available on YouTube. In fact, I left a link in the description below if you guys want to check out the time element later. It's pretty interesting. It's a pretty good episode. So in the time element, that was Rod's first step into the sci-fi world. It aired November 24th, 1958. The story plays around with time travel and the line between reality and illusion. Sound familiar, right? So when Rod handed the script in to CBS originally, they threw it aside. They didn't really see anything in it. But this producer for the Westinghouse Playhouse, his name was Burt Granite. He needed a script for the show, and he decided to look through their vault. And what he found was the time element gathering dust. So Desi Arnaz, who, of course, you know as Lucy and Desi from the Lucille Ball show, he was in charge of the studio at the time, and he would introduce these episodes. Well, he actually introduced this episode of the time element. And it starts some big names. William Bendix was in it, Martin Balsam, Darrell Hickman, Carol Kearney. And that was his first sci-fi script come to life and led to the creation of the great series that we call the Twilight Zone. Rod Serling wrote most of the episodes. That they did have other writers occasionally. Rod had a stable of writers that he'd like to use. George Clayton Johnson. There were some really fine writers on the Twilight Zone. Although Rod, again, he wrote 92 of 156 episodes. Jonathan says, I saw the time element with intro by Desi Arnaz. Yeah, it's a really interesting episode. If you get a chance, give it a watch. Some of the episodes were really scary, David. I totally agree. It was just that unknown element that Rod would add to his stories. And not just Rod. Some of the writers were excellent as well. But let me bring up... Let me see if I can do this here. So I wanted to bring up some screenshots of Where Is Everybody. Actually, this is on my VLC player. I'm just going to kind of skip through it if it cooperates with me. So you see when the episode first opens up, you see our character. This is played by Earl Holliman. And he plays this character walking down a dirt road. It's just him. And it's kind of an endless looking road. And then he hears this music playing. There's a jukebox playing in the background. And he comes up to this cafe. He sees this cafe. And he decides, well, I don't see anybody around. I'm going to go in and see what the deal is here. So he goes in. The jukebox is still playing. And he's looking around. And he's kind of hungry. He's trying to ask the cook in the back if he can have some breakfast. He's really hungry. But he jumps over the counter and sees there's nobody there. He looks out the back door. There's nobody there. He's talking about how hungry he is. When he comes back out again, he sees that the coffee pot's brewing. It just really gives you this weird, strange paranoia kind of feel because all this stuff is happening like it's happening in real life to him. Like there's actually people there, but there's nobody there. The first episode was written by Rod Serling. And it was directed by Robert Stevens. And Earl Holliman, who plays the title character, was a character actor in a lot of films and TV shows since 1953. He played a lot of character parts in westerns. Yeah, correct, Jonathan. Richard Matheson, incredible writer. So back to this episode. It's a real psychological thriller. And you have this man who wakes up with no memory of who he is or how he got there. Holloman puts in a fantastic performance. He's the only actor in the show for the first 20 minutes of the episode. So, with him, coupled with Rod Serling's script and Bernard Herrmann's score, it just really gives you that intense, creepy, psychological paranoia feel. There's also a couple of characters at the end. You'll see James Gregory and Gary Wahlberg play a general and a colonel in the last few minutes of the episode. But Earl Holliman does most of the legwork. Now Holliman, whose name is Sergeant Mike Ferris in this episode, finds himself walking down this endless road. But after he leaves the diner, he keeps going into what looks like a ghost town. And he finds it looks like there's nobody there. But when he looks around, he sees a parked truck with a mannequin in it, a female mannequin. He thinks it's a woman. Yeah, that's correct. You don't really know what's going on throughout most of the episode. It just gives you a really creepy feeling, like the title of the show, Where is Everybody? So Holloman feels like he's being constantly watched. It's just this paranoia feeling where, there's nobody there. He walks over to the parked truck. He's still talking to this woman that he thinks is a woman. And when he gets right up to the truck, he's talking to her. He opens the door and the mannequin falls out and falls onto the ground. That's when he realizes, well, that's not a human either. So I have to refer to some of my notes here as well. But, he walks into a police station and there's nobody in the police station. He's looking around in the jail cells. There's nobody there. There's actually in one of the jail cells, one of the sinks is turned on, the water's running, and he finds a shaving brush with shaving cream still on it. Like there's people still around, but there's nobody in sight. He walks back out and he looks down and he sees a cigar smoking in the ashtray. Like, what the? Who's smoking this cigar? We don't know. We don't know what's going on at this point. When you see this episode for the first time, it's really shocking. Just, when it comes down to the twist ending, Rod was a master of the twist ending. And this one has a great twist at the end. Even though there's no real supernatural elements, it just is that creepy, weird kind of feel. Right, Captain Action, it does give the impression that Holloman is the last man on Earth. That's exactly what it feels like. In fact, he walks into, I think it's, is it a drugstore or some kind of store where he starts making himself a soda or an ice cream. And when he's in there, there's a spinner rack with paperbacks on it, and he's spinning it around, and up the top row is a whole row all the way around the spinner rack of books called The Last Man on Earth. So when as soon as you see that, you're thinking, well, maybe that's what this is. You still don't know what's going on. It's like, well, maybe he is the last man on Earth. Maybe that's what this story's about. No, Rod has other things in mind, though. So he feels like he's constantly being watched. And it just gives you more and more of that paranoia feeling. In 50, space exploration was treated as an existential mystery to mankind. That it was. C Bravo? In Loanna, Serling was heavily influenced by O. Henry and his short stories. Well, even the greatest have their influences. Rod's no different. So he finally tries to convince himself that he's dreaming. He keeps telling himself, it's time to wake up, time to wake up. Despite the detail of everything that's happening, how can it be a dream? It's so detailed, so realistic. Let me go through some of these clips I'm missing on scrolling through these. So let's get him here. Here he is in town. He goes into the bakery. Oh, here's where he comes up to the mannequin. There she is. And there she falls to the ground. I mean, here's a phone ring. So there's actually a telephone booth in this episode. I don't know if you guys, or some of you are old enough to see the telephone booth, to know what a telephone booth is. The town is a very limited space. Yes. It seems this is actually Universal backlot. Very famous movies were shot there, including Back to the Future. You might recognize some of the landmarks in that town. So he sees the book. He sees the book, The Last Man on Earth, and then he comes out. See if I can get some of these images up here. He goes over and he answers the phone, and there's nobody on the phone. It's a recorded message. There's an operator on the end saying it's a recorded message. So he gets so frustrated, he tries to get out of the phone booth, but he can't open it. He keeps pushing it from the inside. But the phone booths back then, or the phone booths anytime, they would open by pulling the handle inwards so you can get out. So an interesting thing is that particular scene comes from Rod Serling himself. When Rod was traveling one time, he was in the airport and he went into a phone booth to make a phone call. And when he was in the phone booth, he heard the announcer saying that his flight was leaving. And kind of in a frantic haste, he tried to get out of the phone booth, and he pushed on it, and he couldn't get out. He finally flagged somebody down to help him get out, and the guy just pushed the door in, and the door opened, and Rod came out. He was really embarrassed by the whole thing, but he decided to use it as, an interesting bit in this first episode. So I thought that was really interesting. So once he gets out, here's where goes into the police station. He goes in, checks out the jail cells. There's the sink that's still running. Now he starts panicking. He's like, what the heck's going on? Am I ever going to find out? Am I ever going to wake up? What is this? Where is everybody? So he runs out. And he starts panicking. He starts screaming. Oh, here's the drugstore scene. This is where he makes himself the ice cream. David Banner, some of the episodes remind me about science fiction pulp magazine stories, the best ones. Yep, yes, for sure. And yes. See, it actually is a mini panic attack that he's having here. Maybe it's not so mini. Actually, he's just having a full blown panic attack. Captain Action. Most of the episodes were done with very simplistic production values. Sometimes they would just use one set on a show, and that's very true. That's how Rod was able to keep his budget under control. Although it did get out of control at times, and CBS had to kind of rein him in. But he was able to do it with these bottle kind of episodes where he just used, a lot of times just one set. For instance, The Invaders was one of the episodes that was very much. In fact, there was not even any dialogue in The Invaders until the very end. Yeah, pesky landlines. Yeah, I remember those pesky landlines. Yeah, I remember dial telephones too. Okay, I'm really showing my age there, but and party lines. Anybody ever have a party line experience? So here's where he sees the last man on Earth. He's looking at the book, and then he goes outside and he starts playing tic-tac-toe with himself. But he's looking around. You know, he can't figure out what's going on right here. You know, he sees this theater. Then the theater's playing Battle Hymn. So he goes into the theater. When he goes in, the movie starts playing. He's like, there's got to be somebody up there. Who's up there? So he runs upstairs, runs up to the projection room, looks inside. There's nobody there. He runs downstairs and he goes smack dab into a mirror. Here he is running down the steps, and there he is on the floor after he ran into the mirror. So at this point, he runs outside. He's in a total panic attack state right now. He falls down on the ground. He's starting to cry, somebody help me, help me, help me. And he comes up to a traffic light and he's hitting the button to try to change the light, just screaming, somebody help me, help me. And this is where we first find out that there's people watching him. So here we come to a scene where you see a bunch of Air Force, people in uniform watching him, hearing him cry for help. And finally, they say, get him out of there. And you see he's in this isolated chamber with wires going to it. And he's inside, and he's smacking the button, and he keeps hitting the clock, which is 6:15, which I forgot to mention way back in the beginning. He drops a clock, the glass smashes, and it's 6:15. It's kind of a foreshadowing. So they finally pull him out of there. And we find out that his experience was really part of an extreme test to see how long a human could withstand isolation in preparation for a mission to the moon and back. In fact, look at my notes here. They actually say that he's confined for 484 hours, which is about 2.5 weeks. Now remember, this was 1959, so man hadn't gone to the moon yet for another 10 years. Now, it's really one of the more realistic Twilight Zones. Didn't really have any supernatural elements, just that paranoia feel that just kind of permeated the whole thing. And of course, the great Rod Serling patented twist ending. Yes, he was in an isolation chamber. That's exactly right. And was having delusions. So apparently, this was not actually the first episode that Rod wrote for the pilot. Supposedly he wrote another episode called The Happy Place. But it was rejected because of the subject matter. It was about a society where people were executed when they turned 60 years old. And they considered it too depressing. Well, I guess I would kind of consider it too depressing myself, but I would have watched it. I don't know what happened to the script, but one interesting bit Serling talked about later in 1975 when he was talking about this particular show in a 1975 lecture. He had stated that Earl Holliman was running a fever of over 100 degrees during the filming of this episode. Crazy. So my thoughts on this episode. On first watch, Where's Everybody is a powerful episode with a really clever plot twist. Earl Holliman is fantastic throughout the episode and really makes you feel the loneliness and paranoia that any of us would face in this situation. Who am I? Where am I? Where did all the humans go? The episode's very unsettling and compelling and a fantastic debut on what is my favorite TV show of all time, and probably some of yours. If not your favorite, probably one of your favorites, or you wouldn't be here. That's why you're here, because we're celebrating the Twilight Zone. By the way, I really want this to be the first episode of a series where I delve deeply into each episode of the Twilight Zone, one by one, in chronological order. It's just something I've wanted to do for a while now. And it also gives me the excuse to go back and watch all these episodes over again, which I wanted to do anyway. So it's as much for me as it is for you guys that are into the Twilight Zone. I just want to re-experience these episodes, and it just shows the quality of Rod Serling's writing and the way these stories were told way back in 1950, 1960 up through 1964. It's still incredible how many of these Twilight Zone episodes were used, the basis were used for other things later on, other movies, other ideas came from this actual series. So it's kind of like the granddaddy of all these sci-fi fantasy type series, for sure. But what do most of you guys think about this episode? Do you have any strong opinions? I know there's a lot of other episodes to come that are just incredible, but this one in particular, David Banner says it was very well directed. That's for sure, and it was directed by. I have that down here somewhere. Or maybe, did I mention who it was directed by in the beginning? I might have. It was directed by Robert Stevens. Luana says, I like Twilight Zone better than any of the other anthology series from the time. Yeah, and there were some really good anthology series at the time. If you guys remember One Step Beyond, that was on for 3 years. And that had some powerful episodes, including one where the host ate mushrooms, magic mushrooms. I don't know if you remember that one. I actually have a video on that if you want to go check it out. And Alfred Hitchcock Presents was another good one. So there were several good anthology series, but this one just blew it out of the park. Johnson says good, but a little too talky. Yeah, I can see that. Well, because you only have one character, and he's, he is repeating some things throughout the episode, and it does kind of draw it out a little bit. I kind of agree with you there. It's definitely not in my top 10 Twilight Zone episodes, but it's right up there. I'd give it at least a 7 or 8 out of 10. Yeah, I totally agree, David. Outer Limits had some great episodes, and it was on around the same time. I think might have come on around, I think it was 1963, so it was around the tail end of the Twilight Zone. Still in black and white, only lasted 2 seasons, which was a crime. That show was incredible. And maybe sometime I'll do a series on the Outer Limits episodes as well, because out of those, there were 49 episodes. And I want to say at least a quarter of them are classics. I want to talk about the one of my favorite episodes, The Sixth Finger with David McCallum. Just incredible stuff on the Outer Limits was going on not on every episode. Again, take it into context. There's some filler episodes. The effects weren't that great. As if with the Twilight Zone, the effects weren't what this show was about. It was the writing, it was the storytelling, it was the characters. And there were some great characters and some great character actors that repeated their roles. Well, not their exact roles, but they were in multiple episodes, like Burgess Meredith. Yeah, Night Gallery never really caught on like the Twilight Zone. Rod kind of released control. He had total control of the Twilight Zone for most of the time it was on the air. But when it came to Night Gallery, he'd kind of gotten tired of the whole Hollywood scene and moved out of that LA area and did a lot of his stuff remotely. So he didn't really have direct control, although there were some phenomenal episodes on Night Gallery as well. Oh yeah, back to Outer Limits, Demon with the Glass Hand, fantastic. Inspiration for Terminator, absolutely. Oh, thanks for mentioning my guitar in the background there. I kind of forgot it was hanging up there. Yeah, the time element was kind of the first episode, but like I was talking about earlier, it was actually an episode of the Westinghouse Desilu Playhouse, which Desi Arnaz hosted. And it kind of, so Twilight Zone kind of came from that episode, the time element. So a lot of people consider it the first episode, even though it technically was part of another series. It was in the vein of the Twilight Zone, and it came on before any of the Twilight Zones. It actually aired in 1958, and the Twilight Zone premiered in 1959. So, we could think of it as the first actual episode. But I didn't want to cover that here. If you guys want me to cover or review that episode of The Time Element, I will. Just, leave a comment below or let me know if you think you want to know more about it. And you want to go check it out on YouTube, you can see the whole thing. I left a link in the description below. Yeah, the movie... Yeah, the actor and a child actor got killed by a helicopter in that movie. Yeah, that was a real shame. I was really looking forward to that movie. When I heard about the tragedy, kind of, my feelings for seeing it weren't as great. It just felt too sad. You know what I mean? The movie was made after Rod Serling passed away. Yep. Yeah, Rod died. When did Rod die? Was it 1975, 76? Rod was a big time smoker. I think he smoked like 3 or 4 packs a day. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he was a big time smoker. Well, it looks like some people really want to talk about Outer Limits, but Zany Misfits was awesome. In fact, I also did a video on Zany Misfits if you want to look it up on the channel. As one of my favorite episodes of The Outer Limits for sure. Yeah, I do believe Spielberg directed one of the episodes on the movie. I haven't seen that movie in a long, long time. And it's the same thing with like the later series of the Twilight Zone, which were, what were there, 3 rebirths? I think the first one I started to watch pretty regularly, and there were some decent episodes, but it just was never the same without Rod Serling. Even the most recent incarnation, it just wasn't the same. It didn't have the same feel. Maybe it's part, missing the nostalgia or missing the Rod Serling touch. I'm not sure what it was for me, but it really didn't hit home like the original series did. Yeah, the Alfred Hitchcock series did have some episodes that would have made perfect zones. There was one with the, was it the eyeball in a jar? I think it was, I forget exactly what it was called. It was something in a jar. I was thinking about doing a video on that one too. Can't remember the exact name of it, but it was pretty cool. I remember that from when I was growing up. It made a real impact on me. Yeah, Zany Misfits. Well, the special effects, again, they're dated. And the actual Zanies themselves were kind of fakey, plastic-looking ants. But they did have, like, that animation that, stop action animation that they used for the mouths and the eyeballs, which really made them creepy. The eyeballs would kind of go around in a circle. And it looked like they had little beards. I don't know if you guys remember Mitch Miller. I always said they looked like ants with Mitch Miller beards. But I did love that episode. Yeah, I wasn't really fond of a lot of the 1 hour episodes, although there were a couple of really, really kickers. It just, the Twilight Zone always lent itself more to that short format, I thought, the 25-minute episodes. Maybe that was part of the problem with the later reboot of the series. They're just too long and too talky, and, get to the point. Get into the character development, get into the twist of the story, and don't try to stretch it out. They just stretch it out too much. Yeah, I love Night Gallery 2's Annie Misfit. It wasn't Rod Serling's favorite series. There were a lot of things that he didn't agree with on it, but I thought it was great. To Serve Man, was that your favorite episode, Point Fire? That's one of my top 10 episodes for sure. Maybe I'll do a video sometime on my top 10 Twilight Zone episodes. They have to be To Serve Man, The Invaders. I have to think about it. There's so many great episodes. I don't want to narrow it down on the live stream here, but I'll make a list of them. Maybe I'll just post them up in the community list. Yeah, I'm not sure if it was a glass eye, Jonathan, but it was really weird. It was like this floaty eyeball in a jar. Can't remember the name of the episode, but it was pretty weird. Yeah, beatnik insects. Exactly right, like Maynard G. Krebs. Insects, if anybody gets the Dobie Gillis reference there. Controversial Shaving says, Consider Her Ways was a great Zone-esque Hitchcock episode done the year after Twilight Zone was canceled. I don't think I saw that one, Conversational Shaving. Never saw that one. Might have to go back and watch it. I'm sorry, Sandy. I didn't mean to call you fake looking. Yeah, the jar with Pat Buttram, the actor that was on Green Acres. Yeah, that's the one. Don't think Serling's absence was the problem with the 80s version. The stories were no good. Yeah, like I said, there were some that I enjoyed. There was one that I remember about a truck driver driving to hell or something like that. That was pretty good. But I couldn't even mention 5 of the episodes at this point. Yeah, classic line. It's a cookbook. Classic line from a classic show. Okay, Mark, what are you saying here? The Twilight Zone is my record of time travel from Montauk, beginning January 1958. I am the living Agent Smith, altering live TV with thought, 8/8/15 and 11/23/15. I am fact because I have made fact. Well, thanks for your contribution, Mark. Right. It was simply the jar. Okay, I'm thinking like eye in the jar or something like that. But yeah, the jar. If any of you have never seen the jar, it's really good. Go check it out. Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Yeah, Yeah, Serling did add the twist to the Planet of the Apes. I think he actually wrote the whole screenplay, but they rewrote a bunch of it, but they left the ending in. At least that's what I remember, and anecdotally. If anybody else can confirm that, post it up for me. Yeah, Richard Kyle was great. He played the alien in The Served Man for sure. And he was also Jaws in the James Bond films. Yep. One of my favorites was Martians Are Due on Maple Street. That's another good one. I think most of my favorite episodes are in the first 3 seasons, but there are some killers in that 5th season as well. Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. You know, they almost didn't make the 5th season. Where would we be without that episode? And how about the Living Doll? Creepy. The Twilight Zone episodes with the dummies in them always creeped me out. In fact, any movie or TV show with a dummy in it, for some reason, always creeped me out. Yeah, they had so many good episodes. It's hard to pick out 10, but I will. Oh, George Lindsay was in the jar too. Yeah, I didn't remember that, but you could definitely be correct in that. George Lindsay from the Andy Griffith Show. David Banner says that's true. Serling did work on Planet of the Apes. Yep. That ending of Planet of the Apes was definitely a Serling twist ending. If you've never, most of you guys have probably seen the original Planet of the Apes, I'm sure. But if you haven't, go check it out. It's a great flick. And that ending is a shocker. Yeah, what kind of a Zone parody did you make conversational? Some of the dialogue in Planet of the Apes sounds like Serling's Twilight Zone work. Yeah, I think it has Serling written on a lot of it. Serling's hand is on a lot of that movie. Yeah, I was thinking that I may have confused that episode with another one called The Glass Eye with Shatner, but no, I believe that it was right. It was the jar, and with what's his name again? Bartram from the guy from Green Acres. Yeah, that original Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, where Bill pulls the curtain back and sees the ape, is incredible. It is a real shocker. Creepy Dolls, Watch Magic with Anthony Hopkins. That's one I've never seen. I may have to check that out, although they do creep me out. You ever seen Trilogy of Terror? With the little voodoo doll? Yeah, Shatner was in a couple of them. The one where he was addicted to the fortune-telling machine was pretty good. Still not in my top 10, but it was a good episode. Talkie Tina, yeah. Living Doll has to be in my top 10. Yeah, there were a lot of episodes like Escape Clause that really were excellent episodes with great endings. I even like The Chaser, if you remember that episode from the first season. There were a lot of episodes in that first season. I think there was like 30-something episodes. But, even when they delved into humor, like The Chaser, it was just really done well. The music was good. The scripts were good. And again, it may not be in my top 10, but that doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy almost every single episode. There were a couple of that are like I could pass on, but you know, when they were doing the video episodes, one of them I really enjoyed. That was 22. It had Jonathan Harris in it, and it just had a real creepy vibe to it. You know, room for one more, honey. I don't know, just something about that. A lot of people don't like that episode, but for some reason, I just really dug it. I think Burgess Meredith was in at least 4 episodes. Yeah, I believe he was in 4 episodes. And yeah, he was the Penguin from Batman. Yeah. Yeah, Burgess got around. He was in how many Rocky movies was he in? The first 3? I forget now. You know, the memory starts going after a while. But I do enjoy my Twilight Zone. I have to get ready to get off here, guys. I have a video that's premiering at 4 o'clock. If you guys want to catch it, it premieres at 4. I'll be in the chat. And I left a link to it in the description below. And I'm going to be scheduling these live broadcasts on a more regular basis where I really want to cover a lot of these episodes. So the next one, episode number 2, is One for the Angels. I don't have an air date yet, but I will, I will post it up. I'll post it up in my community tab, and then I'll put it up as a premiere. So, and I'm trying to get out at least one brand new long form episode every week, sometimes more, but it takes me a while to produce. I'm the only one doing them here. So, you know, with the scripts and the voiceovers and the editing and stuff, it takes me a while. So even though I had a couple of weeks off, I'm trying to get back to it now. I've got a couple on the drawing board, and you'll be seeing a new one next Sunday. And maybe that's when my next live broadcast will be too. If you think this time works out for you guys? Yeah, beer commercials. That's my new video. Beer commercials that would be canceled today. Yeah, this was a lot of fun, Luana. Thanks for joining. I want to thank everybody for joining. Anyway, I think I'm going to bug out of here now. I really want to thank you guys for watching. I really do appreciate it. Stay tuned for the debut of my latest video. And I'll leave a link. Like I said, I'll leave a description. I'll leave a link in the description below. So thank you very much for watching today. Again, I really do appreciate it. And hopefully I'll see you in the chat when my new video premieres in about 7 minutes now.